It's time for Recipe of the Day. Happy Valentine's Day. I have a special and delicious meal idea for you. It is a rack of lamb, which really serves two people, maybe three sometimes, but it is perfect for two and perfect for you on this Valentine's Day, whether that's tonight or at some point this weekend. So the rack of lamb is a beautiful cut. It is lean and tender, juicy. It's kind of like beef tenderloin in that way. You know, it's actually not very large, sort of thin and long. This has the bones on it, of course, like a long rack of rib bones. But the meat is very similar to that tenderloin, or like filet mignon. Same thing, just filet mignon is cut into the little steaks. So a rack of lamb is actually quite small, and so it cooks reasonably quickly. And so I like to do it in a two-step process, searing it in a pan first so that we get some nice color on it, and then transferring it to the oven, a lower temperature oven, to finish cooking. If you just did it straight into the oven, it's harder for it to get some of that nice color on it because it's not in there for very long. It is very likely that if you get a rack of lamb at the grocery store in the United States, it will be Frenched, which means that the meat, fat, anything like that has been trimmed off of the last couple of inches of bone. So you don't have to look for anything specific. It's probably going to just be like that. If it isn't, though, I mean, you could ask your butcher to do it, but you can actually follow this recipe just as it is without it being French. So that doesn't matter. Now, I don't marinate this cut just like with the beef tenderloin or filet mignon. It really is so tender and lovely that it doesn't need it. But I do like to do a dry brine, and that's optional here. So you're going to sprinkle it with salt and pepper, and then you can proceed immediately with cooking it, or you can put it into the fridge for at least 2 hours. And then the salt is going to penetrate and season right into the meat and also tenderize a little bit more. It does do that a bit. If you wanted to, you could lay a bed of herbs down or kind of push them to the meat while it's doing that. I often will just do some rosemary just sort of tucked around it. And that is great because you do get the transfer of the rosemary flavor onto the meat while it's dry brining, but you don't get the little bits of rosemary that would kind of burn and get bitter when we actually pan sear this meat at the high temperature, you know? But that is optional. You don't have to do the dry brine. You don't have to do the herbs. If you do the dry brine, it can just be the salt and pepper. That's up to you. The only other thing I'll say before we jump into making this is that I do recommend that you have a probe thermometer when doing a rack of lamb like this because it is small. It's going to cook fairly quickly and get to your window of preferred doneness pretty quickly and not be in that window for very long. So having that thermometer right in the middle lets you know exactly, and you can monitor that, and then you know exactly when to take it out. You're going to be taking it out 5 degrees before your desired doneness, and then it will raise up to the temperature you want while it rests. I will say the USDA recommends that lamb be cooked to 145 degrees Fahrenheit with a 3-minute rest after that, which is medium as far as I can tell. I've done a lot of research into lamb temperatures from a variety of books that I have and online, and the ranges don't really line up everywhere. So I actually did a test with some lamb rib chops. I'm sure I told you about this, where I cooked a bunch of them to different temperatures and cut into them to see how pink they were. And the result ended up corresponding to one of my cookbooks. It was to the all new Good Housekeeping cookbook, which is not new anymore, but is a resource that I use quite often. So I was happy to see that it lined up pretty well with that. But I will give you those temperatures when we get to that part of the recipe. For now, I just wanted you to know that having that probe thermometer would be great. Now, this recipe, like I said, we're going to pan sear the rack of lamb first, and then we're going to actually do a little topping that goes onto it, and then it finishes in the oven with that topping on it. So let's get into this recipe. You're going to have a 1 pound, probably Frenched rack of lamb. If it has a lot of fat along the top, you can trim it off or you can leave it on. It's up to you. Then you're going to sprinkle it all over with a teaspoon of kosher salt and a half teaspoon of black pepper. And then, like I said, you can proceed immediately, or you can put it on a rack, on a pan in the fridge for 2 to 8 hours. And that's just going to let that salt kind of get in there a little bit more. Now, whether you are putting it back into the fridge or are deciding to cook it right away, I just want to say that you don't need to leave this out at room temperature for any amount of time to try and make it cook more quickly or anything like that, because it is going to cook quickly. And in fact, to get a really nice crust on it and have it cook really beautifully inside, having it be cold first, it slows all of that down. You get a better crust. The lamb is in the warmth for longer, so it's going to just kind of melt a little bit more. So just go straight from the fridge either way. You're going to preheat your oven to 300 degrees Fahrenheit, then use that thermometer, put it right through to the middle, so it's right at the center of your rack. And then you're going to get that topping ready now so that when it's time to transfer the rack of lamb to the oven, you have it ready to go. It's 2 teaspoons of chopped fresh rosemary, 2 cloves of minced garlic, and 2 teaspoons of lemon zest. Mix that up and then set it aside. Then you need a large skillet that is oven safe, like a cast iron is perfect. Heat it over medium heat and add a tablespoon of olive oil and a tablespoon of butter. When it's really nice and hot, add the rack of lamb mediast side down and cook until it's well browned underneath, 4 to 5 minutes. Then I like to do the 2 ends. So you're going to sort of flip it 90 degrees so that it's standing on one end perpendicular to the skillet, and sear one of those ends 2 to 3 minutes, then flip and do the other end, another 2 to 3 minutes till browned. Then you're going to set the rack so that it is parallel to the skillet again, now with the meatier side up. You already browned that side, so your rib tips are going to be in a horizontal row pointed downwards. Now we're getting the underside is going to get some browning while the roast is in the oven. Before putting it in the oven, sprinkle the top of that meat, that meatier side, with your rosemary mixture that you made. You can press down on that a little bit to help it adhere, and then transfer the skillet with the lamb into the oven. And the recipe says roast for 8 to 30 minutes, and that's a crazy range, but it is because it depends on how well done you want it. And okay, we're going to be taking it out 5 degrees below our desired temperature, like I said. And here are the temperatures and time ranges. So if you want your lamb rare, you're taking it out at 125 degrees Fahrenheit, which will be between 8 to 14 minutes. If you want it medium rare, you're taking it out at 135 degrees Fahrenheit, which is going to be between 10 to 17 minutes. If you want it medium, you want it to be 145 degrees Fahrenheit, which again is the recommended temperature by the USDA. And for the medium, it's going to be 15 to 22 minutes. Medium well, you're taking it out at 150 degrees Fahrenheit, which is going to take between 20 to 26 minutes. And well done, you're taking it out at 155 degrees Fahrenheit, which is going to be between 22 to 30 minutes. And if those ranges seem large, it's just because not every rack of lamb is the same thickness. So it really does depend on how thick yours is. And they're not all the same number of ribs. Sometimes butchers cut them smaller than others. So it really does vary. And this way you have the range, but you're also using that probe thermometer. It's going to be fine. And don't forget, it rests for 10 minutes under some aluminum foil after it comes out of the oven. Transfer the lamb to a plate or a cutting board and tent it with foil and leave it there for 10 minutes. And in that time, you can finish up the rest of your dinner, whatever you are making. And then to serve it, you are simply slicing between the bones. You can do that at the table or at your cutting board at the counter. And then you dig in. A beautiful, special, romantic meal. I hope you love this one. I know you will. I will put the link to the recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. Everything there is arranged by date, so it's helpful to know that today is Valentine's Day, February 14th of 2025. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all-new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast recipe of the day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.